It began with a breeze. Not a strong one. Just enough to stir the curtain where it hung, half open, letting the morning light stream through. I'd seen that curtain dance 1,000 times, but today was different. There was something in the air. Something unspoken, but not unnoticed. The world paused. The birds weren't in a rush. Their songs came slower, like lullabies sung between yawns. The sun wasn't blazing. It rested low in the sky, casting gold gently across the walls. My coffee sat untouched beside me, cooling quietly. I didn't know it yet, but this would be the day. The day everything changed. Not with fanfare or sudden tragedy, but with stillness. The air outside had that just woken scent, dewy grass, faint soil, and something light, almost floral, though no flowers were in sight. I stepped out onto the porch without shoes, letting the warm wood cool my feet. Usually, I'd be dressed by now. Laptop open, emails waiting, some form of caffeine in hand. But today, I wasn't thinking about any of it. The world beyond the porch stretched out in a hush, like it, too, had decided to rest. I looked down the street, a quiet neighborhood road that curved softly out of view. On any other morning, I wouldn't have noticed how the sunlight filtered through the maple trees, casting moving shadows on the pavement like the slow rhythm of waves. I stood there for a while, not moving. Just watching. The stillness wasn't empty, it was full. Full of things I usually missed. The slow sway of branches. The way light changed the color of things. The distant hum of a lawn mower blocks away, blending into the silence like a background note in a long song. Where do I need to be? I asked aloud, to no one. The wind answered first, brushing my skin like a whisper across the cheek. So I walked. Not far, not fast. Just barefoot along the front walk and then onto the sidewalk, where the stone was warm but not harsh. The earth greeted me with its quiet hum, and I greeted it back with each careful step. There was something magical in walking slowly. It let me see things, a cracked pebble embedded in concrete, a patch of moss in a sidewalk seam, a snail inching its way toward a shaded corner. I passed the neighbors' houses, most of them still closed up, blinds drawn, cars in driveways. But one window was open, and inside a curtain swayed just like mine had earlier. A cat sat on the sill, watching the world like it knew a secret. We locked eyes. Neither of us moved. Then the cat blinked, as if to say, "It's okay. Keep going." So I did. I turned down a street I rarely took. Normally, I'd walk the main avenue, where the trees were more spaced out and the sidewalks were even. But this time, I followed the little curve around the corner, a street with older houses, each one different. The first house had a blue door with chipped paint and wind chimes that danced even when the air was still. The sound was soft, not clanging, but melodic, like a lullaby remembered from childhood. I stopped and let the sound fill me. "You're allowed to pause," it seemed to say. Further down, there was a patch of wildflowers growing along a fence, not planted, not pruned. Just there. Nature claiming space in a world that didn't always make room for it. There were yellows and whites and flashes of violet, swaying gently in the breeze. And then, from behind one of the fences, a voice. "Morning." I turned. An old man stood behind a screen door, holding a mug. His gray hair was wild in that charming way, and his eyes were bright even in shadow. "You look like you're heading somewhere important," he said with a grin. I smiled. "I think I am," I replied, surprised at my own honesty. He nodded like he understood exactly what I meant, even if I didn't. "Don't let the pavement tell you where to go," he said. "Some of the best places don't have sidewalks." I chuckled, thanked him, and walked on. That stuck with me. Don't let the pavement tell you where to go. There was something freeing about that, the idea that not every journey needed a clear path. That wandering could be sacred. That walking with no destination could still take you exactly where you needed to be. About 3 blocks down, the houses grew smaller. Yards gave way to open patches of land, less curated, more natural. That's when I saw it, a small path barely visible between 2 tall hedges. No sign. No gate. Just a space between green. I paused, looked around. No one else was there. So I stepped through. The path opened to a clearing, not large, not loud, just wide enough to breathe in. Trees bordered the space in a soft circle, their leaves high and gently rustling. In the center, a bench. Wooden, old, worn by rain and sun and time. I sat. And that's when it happened. The world didn't shift, I did. It wasn't a thought, not exactly. Not a voice, not a vision. Just a stillness I hadn't known I needed. A stillness that seemed to rise from the soil beneath me and settle into my bones. I closed my eyes. For a moment, the boundary between me and the earth felt thinner. Like I could feel the grass growing. The trees breathing. Like I could hear the silence behind the wind. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes. Maybe hours. Time stretched, not in a heavy way, but in a way that made it feel unimportant. And as I sat there, something uncoiled in me, something I didn't know I'd been carrying. An ache. A tension. A knot that had no name. It softened. And then, it let go. My eyes opened slowly. The sky was deeper now, the sunlight golden and angled. Shadows grew longer, stretching like tired arms. I hadn't planned to sit for so long, but I felt no rush to move. The bench had cradled me, and the world had waited. I leaned back, let my head tilt toward the sky. A single cloud drifted overhead, slow and shapeless. I watched it like one watches a fire, not for information, but for peace. "What do you want?" a voice in my head asked gently. It wasn't demanding. It didn't come from fear or stress. It was curious, like a friend sitting next to me, softly nudging. I didn't answer right away. I thought about it. About all the things I'd thought I wanted, career moves, milestones, checklists. And yet here I was, on a bench in a nameless park, barefoot, with no plan, and I felt more myself than I had in years. "I want this," I whispered aloud. "Just this. Not the bench. Not the quiet park. But the feeling. The feeling of being enough. Of not striving. Of not performing. Of simply existing, and knowing it was okay." I hadn't realized how many days I'd spent chasing moments, and how few I'd spent living inside them. Now I was here. No noise. No performance. Just breath. Just presence. And something inside me, that old part that always pushed, finally surrendered. When I finally stood, the air had cooled. Evening hadn't arrived yet, but it was near. You could feel it in the way the wind changed direction, the way the birds lowered their songs. I stepped off the bench with the kind of softness you use when waking a sleeping child. The park path was quiet, but not empty. It was alive, full of things that didn't need to shout to be heard. I walked slower now, even slower than before. My bare feet pressed against the dirt, the grass, the stone, and I could feel the earth welcoming each step. Like it remembered me. Like it had always been there, waiting for me to finally arrive without rushing past. As I moved, my mind stayed still. No racing. No planning. Just noticing. The way a squirrel darted across the path and paused to look at me. The shimmer of light off a puddle. The sound of leaves overhead, whispering a language I couldn't translate, but deeply understood. I reached the hedges, stepped back onto the street, and looked back once. That park, the bench, the breeze, the breath, it had no name. But it didn't need one. I didn't need to label what it gave me. And I didn't need to explain what had changed. I just knew, it had. As I walked home, I noticed things I never had before. The houses I passed had stories in their windows, a teacup left on a sill, a child's drawing taped to the glass, a dog lying just inside a screen door, guarding a family with soft eyes. I had seen these homes hundreds of times, but today they felt different. As if they were showing me their quiet truths. A woman across the street was watering her garden. She waved, and I waved back. She smiled in that way people do when they're not in a hurry. "Beautiful day," she called. "It really is," I said. And I meant it. I wasn't thinking about the next meeting or my inbox or the way the laundry had been waiting 2 days longer than it should. I wasn't thinking of anything. I was just walking. My pace matched my breath. My breath matched the wind. I passed a cracked sidewalk I'd always found annoying, the way it tripped me up. But now, the crack looked like a branch, curling into the concrete, growing out of time. Even that felt like a kind of beauty. And above, the sky had shifted from gold to lavender. I hadn't looked up this much in years. There's something about walking home slowly, not because you're tired, but because you don't want to leave the stillness behind. But something in me knew. I wouldn't lose it. The stillness wasn't in the park. It was in me now. When I reached my front porch, I paused. Same door. Same mat. Same quiet creak as I opened it. But the house felt different now, not because it had changed, but because I had. The air inside greeted me like an old friend who had been waiting, patiently, for me to return and finally notice them. I stepped in and closed the door behind me. The soft click echoed like punctuation on a chapter. I didn't turn on any lights. The fading evening light was enough, soft, almost silver, spilling over the floorboards and walls like a quiet tide. I sat on the edge of the couch, the cushions sighing under my weight, and just listened. The hum of the fridge. The rustle of the curtains. My own breathing. And underneath it all, the new silence, the one I had brought home with me. I looked around the room, the photos on the shelves, the books I'd half read, the candle I hadn't lit in months. They all seemed to be waiting. Not for anything big. Just for me to be present again. I got up slowly and moved to the kitchen. I boiled water, not for caffeine or alertness, but for tea, something warm and grounding. I chose chamomile. It felt right. While the water heated, I stood by the window and watched as the world shifted further into dusk. Across the street, the cat was still on the sill, now silhouetted by warm light. A family gathered at a dinner table, laughter muffled by glass. And in my chest, a calm I hadn't known in years. The kettle let out its soft, rising cry, not a scream, not today. Just a gentle note to remind me it was ready. I poured the water over the dried flowers, watched them bloom in the cup like tiny underwater dancers. The scent rose to meet me, warm, light, honeyed. Comfort in steam. I carried the mug to the table by the window and sat down. The wood beneath my hand was cool, smooth in places and slightly rough in others. I traced the grains without thinking. And as the tea cooled, memories began to arrive. Not loud, not urgent. Just images. I remembered being a child, sitting on my grandmother's porch in late summer, shelling peas into a metal bowl. I could hear her humming, something wordless, something soft, and I could feel the sun on my bare legs. No thoughts of the future, no regrets of the past. Just the rhythm of hands and breath and time. I remembered sitting under a tree during college, reading a novel with no goal, no deadline. I'd turn pages without realizing the sky was changing. I'd let the hours slip through me like wind. And I remembered a day years ago, walking by the sea. The waves had been small but steady, and I had talked to no one for hours. Just listened to the ocean, to my own steps, to the call of gulls far overhead. All of these memories had one thing in common, stillness. A pause. A moment lived fully. And now, another had joined them, this day. The day I chose to listen again. I got up and opened the drawer where I kept the old candles. One had long been buried beneath matchbooks and birthday leftovers. It was lavender and cedar, barely used. I lit it. The flame caught, flickered, then stood tall, a little sun, dancing just for me. Its scent began to fill the room, grounding, soft, like clean earth and forgotten gardens. I placed it near the tea, and for a moment, everything felt whole. Like nothing was missing. Like nothing needed fixing. I sipped slowly. Outside, the sky was navy now, and stars had begun to peek out, shy at first. I opened the window to let the air in. It was cooler now, but not cold, the kind of air that wraps around you gently. I leaned against the windowsill and whispered to no one. "Thank you." I wasn't sure what I was thanking. Maybe the trees. Maybe the silence. Maybe the stillness that found its way back to me. Or maybe, myself. For slowing down. For stepping off the path. For choosing this. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check my phone. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I let the evening be quiet. I picked up a book I hadn't finished. One with pressed leaves inside, a gift from a past version of me who knew this moment might come someday. I read slowly, pausing between paragraphs just to feel the weight of the words. The room around me felt lighter. As if the walls had taken a breath and softened their edges. My body followed. I curled up under a blanket, the kind I usually saved for colder days. But today wasn't about logic. It was about comfort. Outside, a dog barked once, then stopped. A breeze whispered through the trees and found its way into my room, brushing my cheek like a mother would. Everything in the world was quiet, and yet so full. No pressure. No to-do lists. No comparisons. Just a candle. A cup of tea. A window full of stars. And the peace I had been carrying with me all along, now finally seen. I stood slowly, blew out the candle. Watched the smoke curl and vanish. There was something sacred in that tiny act, like closing a chapter. The room dimmed. The last light of the day kissed the far wall, fading like a memory that didn't need holding anymore. I walked toward the bedroom. My steps were quiet. Not from stealth, but from calm. I lay down with no plan to sleep, just to rest. But as soon as my head touched the pillow, my body knew, this was what it had been waiting for. The window stayed open. The breeze came in gently, carrying the last notes of birds and the hush of night. I pulled the blanket over my shoulder and closed my eyes. Not to escape the day, but to honor it. This was the day that changed my life. And it didn't need grand gestures or loud revelations. Just a walk. A bench. A breath. And a choice to be still. Sleep found me slowly, like the sun setting, not all at once, but with grace. And as I drifted, I knew I would carry this quiet with me, wherever I went.